Hello, everybody. This is Gerald Salenti, and it's Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. And here are some of today's trends in the news. Again, the only place anywhere on earth that you get in-depth socioeconomic and geopolitical trends analysis and trend forecasts. And we're giving you everything we can. And your new trends during. Remember, the trend is your friend, and we're your friend. Nobody does this. They don't know how to do it. So, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, nope, none of them have them. Oxford, Cambridge don't teach trend tracking because they don't know how to do it. And when you Google up trends, they say, oh, these are the fashion trends. Oh, these are the, get the hell out of here. Those aren't trends. That's little bullshit crap. Anyway, speaking of bullshit crap, the markets. Yep. The markets today, the Dow was way up. It was almost hitting over 480 points. But it closed, it was down, and it closed up 73 points. So is there a plunge protection team? Because this thing's going down. And again, we were the first. We're number one. In February, we forecast March economic and equity market madness. And here we are. So yesterday, the Fed they raised interest rates 25 basis points, even though there's this banking crisis going on, but they're saying everything is just fine about that because Janet Yellen, Miss Fatcha how could anybody listen to this woman? The crap, her and Powell, you look at these clowns, what the fuck is wrong with you to swallow this shit from these people? Holy Christ. Well, she looks good now. There he is. Yep. Princeton boy. Yeah, she says the Treasury is ready to take additional actions if warranted to stabilize banks. Oh, additional actions? Put more money in there to bail out your buddies when it's only supposed to be $250,000 covered by the FDIC, and you said you weren't going to do it and you did it? Yeah, it's all a game. It's all a game. They fought the COVID war by pumping in all these trillions of dollars, record low interest rates, and they'll do anything they can to keep this Ponzi scheme going. They couldn't be called a Ponzi scheme because that's being disrespectful to Italians. It's bigger than that. Ponzi, yeah. How about a Yellen scheme or Bernanke scheme? So here's a quote in here. By even if the banking woes have been contained and deposit flight is over, I don't think they'll prove to be the only set of headlines that pose risks to the economy, wrote Liz Young, head of investment at SoFi. Yeah, no kidding. We've been saying this for how long? This is real. We're going to go into a recession very quickly, probably by summertime. And you saw what happened with gold prices today. The gold prices spiked. They hit over $204 an ounce. They came back to around 1996. And again, in our Trends Journal this week, we said 2023. Yep, war horse on parade, yeah. We said 2023. That was last week's Trends Journal cover. Wasn't this week's Trends Journal cover the dehumanization? That's this one. But anyway, we said that they're going to bail out the banks. They're going to do everything they can, but they're only going to be able to go so far with it. And we warned, we're saying that by the second quarter by the summer of this year, we're going to go into recession. And we warned this in the Trends Journal. And we're also saying about gold. So here's the deal. Very simple. As interest rates come down, because they're going to start bringing them down, the dollar is going to crash. The only reason the dollar is going up now and strong is because they're raising interest rates. So again, you got the banking crisis. They just raised interest rates. they made a very bad situation worse. And they did it over there in the EU. They raised them 50 basis points this week as well. Well, last week and then the last week. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at a financial crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before. And Yellen's saying that they're going to keep pumping more money in there. They'll do everything they can. There's a thing called the Plunge Protection Team. Isn't that a nice word? Plunge Protection Team to rig the markets. So again, we called it in the Trends Journal in February, March economic and equity market madness, and it's here now. And what this person is saying about it, it's much bigger than just the banking system. And again, each week in the Trends Journal, we put the layoffs. 33 weeks in a row we've been doing it. They're enormous. They're hardly being covered. Powell calls financial sector sound. Okay, yeah. How about
bullshit?
It's Powell. Sound? What's sound about it? Americans don't believe it. Americans' faith in banks. Only 10% of U.S. adults say they have high confidence in the nation's banks and other financial institutions, a new poll finds. And this is following a poll from the Associated Press Newark Center for Public Affairs Research also finds that a majority say the government is not doing enough to regulate the industry. Yep. Everybody knows it's a crime syndicate. What regulate the industry? How about that slimy bastard, that murderous prick that every time he got caught with his pants down, Bill Clinton bombs away over Baghdad? Oh, yeah, that guy that did away with the Glass-Steagall Act? You think the Goldman Sachs gangs pay him $300,000 an hour to give a talk when you can hear fucking bullshit for free? It's called payback. The people know how bad it is. Again, the worst is yet to come, and everybody knows it. But Powell says it's going to be fine, so believe Powell. Why not believe Powell? This is the same fucking arrogant scumbag that said inflation was only temporary and transitory, along with Yellen screaming that it was nothing. So believe what they say. They'll tell you the truth. Yesterday, when they announced the rate hike, Powell said, we no longer state that ongoing increases will be needed to quell inflation. Instead, we now anticipate that some additional policy firming may be appropriate. Like we'll make up any fucking shit we want. They're going to lower interest rates. When they lower interest rates, gold is going to skyrocket because the dollar is going to crash. You're hearing it from us. Bundesbank urges Eurozone to remain hawkish. Great. Remain hawkish. Keep raising those interest rates as Germany, the largest economy in Europe, is that far away from recession. Our fight against inflation is not over, Joachim Nagel said after he and other members of the European Central Bank Governing Council stuck to plans to increase interest rates by 0.5 percentage point last week. There's certainly no mistaking that price pressures are strong and broad-based across the economy. Yep, because a lot of it, because of the sanctions that you put on Russia, drove energy prices through the roof and other products as well. But we won't talk about that. Let's just stay stupid. Because UK inflation, this is the headline out of the Wall Street Journal, resumes its rise, defying expectations. Defying expectations? You mean not believing the shit that they shove down your throat? The UK, you might as well put an F and a U and a C. That's a fuck UK, man. It's gone. It's gone. That place is going down big and hard. Again, the only magazine that for almost 3 years, actually last March, we warned of an office building bust when around this time they started locking down everything. That's right. 3 years ago, almost to the date, March. Property debt adds to lender worries. This is from yesterday's Wall Street Journal. Many skyscrapers, business parks, and other office properties have lost value during the pandemic era as their business tenants have adopted new remote and hybrid workplace strategies. Yep. This year will be critical because about $270 billion in commercial mortgages held by banks are set to expire. Yeah. And they have these revolving loans that keep going up as interest rates keep going up. You haven't seen anything yet. You think the Silicon con man bank bust was a bad one? The worst is much yet to come. Yep. They're not going to be able to pay these things off because people aren't renewing their leases. And if they are, they're taking a lot less space. Freight rebound hopes are fading as retailers show caution on growth. Oh, caution on growth already. This is the big story in today's Wall Street Journal. Caution on growth. Retailers, as they just raised interest rates. Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Container imports at the ports of Los Angeles, the nation's busiest complex. You ready? Down 38% this February from last February. 38%. Again, we've been putting each week the job layoffs, but I'm mentioning this one because it's in today's New York Times. Job platform Indeed to lay off 15% of its staff as headwinds loom. I'm mentioning this because they're quoting this guy. The Recruit Holdings Company owned platforms said that cuts will come from nearly every team, function, level, and region, and Indeed Flex, an app for job seekers looking to find temporary work. Quote, it is becoming increasingly likely that the human resource tech revenue will decline in the fiscal year 2023 and potentially again in 2024, said Chief Executive Chris Hames in a message to employees. He said job openings in the U.S. declined recently and that the company expects the trend to continue over the next 2 to 3 years. And talking about temporary workers, they fired temporary workers during the holiday season in December 2022 at the peak of the holiday season, some 35,000. The worst is yet to come. Again, we're talking about no one's putting the pieces together. We're talking about the office building bust and less people commuting. So here's an article in yesterday's toilet paper record, the New York Times. Bus company ends service to New York, citing COVID. DeCamp Bus Lines, which serves riders in Passaic and Essex counties in northern New Jersey, announced on Monday that it would end its commuter service to and from New York City on April 7th. Yep. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey reported that PATH service, remember these are the trains, which brings commuters in and out of Manhattan, recorded 52% of its 2019 readership levels last year. They're down 48% before the COVID war. The damage that this has done is incalculable. Incalculable. And on to some international news. This is big. This is the toilet paper record headline. Xi's brotherly hug with Putin. It's against the Americans. Mr. Xi and Mr. Putin used the pomp of the 3-day state visit, this is the language they use, which ended on Wednesday, to signal to their public and to Western capitals that the bond between the two countries remains robust, in their eyes, indispensable. They're uniting. They've had enough of the United States hegemony in terms of geopolitics and economics. They're tired of the dollar. Again, there's going to be a dollar. The dollar's going to decline bad. It's going. The end is coming. In Mr. Xi's view, he stated in blunt terms that the United States is engaged in, quote, all-around containment, encirclement, and suppression of China. That's his quote. And this is how they write it in the New York Times. The leaders talked about plans to enhance economic cooperation and draw more Chinese investors to Russia. They declare their admiration for each other's authoritarian rule. That is total propaganda. Authoritarian. Oh, we love that you're an authoritarian ruler. They didn't say that to each other. But let's talk about some authoritarian rulers that the fucking New York slime loves, and they pumped up, and they said how great they are. Here we go. Go back 3 years ago. CNN, the Cartoon News Network. The nation's most populous state is ordering its nearly 40 million residents to stay home to prevent the spread of the deadly coronavirus. You ready? 19 people have died and 900 tested positive for coronavirus in California that has 40 million people. Authoritarian? How about that arrogant daddy's boy? My daddy was an attorney for Getty Oil. Salenti, your father was just a laborer. I'm better than you. I'm locking down everything. Quote, this is a moment where we need some straight talk. As individuals and as a community, we need to do more this moment. We are confident that the people of the state of California will abide by the right things to do. They closed down dine-in restaurants, bars, gyms, convention centers. Quote, we project that roughly 56% of our state's population will be infected with the virus over an 8-week period.
Bullshit.
Yep. A letter to Trump asking him to send a USNS Mercy Hospital ship to Port of Los Angeles. Yep. What else did he say? Well, he said that it's a statewide mandatory restrictions. So I looked up the numbers. In 3 years, out of 40 million people, 100,000 died, roughly. That's 0.25% of the population. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 94% of the people that died of COVID had 2.6 pre-existing comorbidities, or 2.3. I'm not positive right now. That means 97.5% of the people, 99.25% of the people. No, it's good. 99.75% of the people didn't die of COVID. But they locked down everything. You want to talk about authoritarian governments? Cuomo orders all non-essential New York workers to stay home. The executive order takes effect Sunday morning. This is March 20th, the same day. It comes a day after Governor Gavin Newsom ordered the state's nearly 40 million people to stay home. Cuomo says, I accept full responsibility. If someone is unhappy, if someone wants to blame someone or complain about someone, blame me. There is no one else who is responsible for this decision. Oh, authoritarian? A little fucking arrogant prick. I'll tell you what to do. You do what I tell you. It's America. Amerika. USSA, United Soviet States of America. Civil fines and mandatory closures of business that don't comply with the new mandate will be enforced beginning on Sunday. Yeah. How unhappy? How about all the suicide rates? How about all the businesses that went out of business? How about the drugs? How about the crime rate? You did a great job. And the people followed. As of late Friday, there were 35 deaths. What is it, about 29 million people in New York? And then he goes on that 2 days later, he yells that people, it's insensitive, arrogant, and self-destructive. Cuomo slams ignorance of social distancing in New York City. He says that he told Governor that too many people were in the park. Too many people were outside, and the chances of getting COVID outside, according to the data, are like less than 1 in 10,000. Authoritarian? Those dirty Chinese and Russians. Oh, here's one for you. This is March 20th, 2020. Police in Ocean County have arrested a homeowner for hosting a pop-up wedding of more than 50 people in attendance during the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, they were calling it a pandemic when it just started. Yeah. Again, it's a pandemic. How many people do you know that died of the virus? How many people do you know personally that died of the virus that weren't elderly and or had pre-existing comorbidities? But they called it a pandemic and started selling it right back then. It goes on to say, earlier this week, Governor Phil Murphy, another arrogant little fucking piece of shit, banned gatherings of 50 people or more. I say it should have been 51. No, I think it should have been 49 people. We'll make up any shit we want. We're fucking arrogant political freaks. And as I say, who the fuck are you to tell me what to do? Hey, politicians, who the fuck are you to tell me what to do? On Friday, Murphy said he expects to issue more restrictions on social distancing. There you go. Going back, China and Russian presidents meet as U.S. targets both countries. This is how they wrote about it in the World Socialist website. The two leaders hit out at Washington, urging, quote, the United States to stop undermining international and regional security and global strategic stability in order to maintain its own unilateral military superiority. This is big, what's going on between China and Russia. All right, here's the deal, right? China and Russia versus NATO and US. The winner is everybody loses. China auditions for lead global role. That's the way they wrote it in the Wall Street Journal today. But China's willingness to wade into these conflicts, talking about a peace deal, is such a strident way, marks a new phase of the country's vision for itself and its role in the world. Asking for a peace plan They call it a strident effort. Here we go. Britain defends move to supply shells with depleted uranium. Oh, depleted uranium's great. It's fine. The Pentagon said it's okay. But West brings humankind closer to nuclear Armageddon, Russian ambassador. This is the U.S. ambassador, Russian ambassador to the United States. He's responding to a statement by U.S. officials that depleted uranium munitions are a standard type of weapon that has been used for decades and doesn't pose any heightened risks. Oh, it's been used by decades, but the United States has slaughtered people in Iraq, in Yugoslavia, in Libya, in Afghanistan, so it's just fine. He says, commenting on this kind of nonsense is really hard. U.S. officials have reached a new low with their irresponsible statements. There is continuous flow of lethal weapons to Ukraine, which are used to annihilate civilians, residential areas, schools and hospitals, and kindergartens. He's talking about how they're bombing in the Donbass region that nobody ever talks about, but that's okay. Ukraine can kill who they want. It's fine. And he said, quote, "It seems that the enlightened West, led by Washington, has irrevocably decided to bring humanity to a dangerous line beyond which a nuclear Armageddon is looming ever more distinctly." How long have we been warning about this? And all they're doing is building up the war. And in your Trends Journal, we have all of the articles in there about how the United States, here we go, that's the new cover, Devolution of Humanity. Yep. As I said, oh, here's another, looking at that cover and keeping it there. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention said of the 1 to 17-year-olds that were hospitalized of COVID, over 60% were obese. Yep. Can't believe you're getting sick when something hits you. I can't figure it out. He goes on to say here that the Global Times, the Chinese, they took a shot at it too. Depleted uranium, commonly known as dirty bombs, is aptly named as a word. Dirty carries a profound connotation. When we hear this term, we immediately think of the United States and NATO. Again, this is getting out of control. Oh, by the way, Biden's popularity rating just came back to the low. Remember what I tell you. When all else fails, they take you to war. His popularity rating hit a low when they pulled out of Afghanistan, that disaster. And then as the Ukrainian war ramped up, his popularity ramped up as the United States joined the war to fight against Russia. And now it's going down again because the economy is going down. So a lot more. Oh, Israel airstrikes hit Syria's Aleppo airport for the second time this month. That's okay. The United States, Israel, they could, in Europe, the NATO, the UK, they can slaughter anybody they want. But hey, nobody else could fight in a war, only them. And China hits back at U.S. criticism of Ukraine peace effort. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby told reporters that China was, quote, not impartial due to its relationship with Russia. Quote, the U.S. and China's position cannot be seen as impartial. Does that mean pouring weapons into the conflict should be seen as impartial? Does that mean causing the crisis to escalate should be seen as impartial? Chinese Foreign Minister spokesman Wang said. So that's it. They're ramping up the war. Peace is not allowed to be talked about. And I'm thinking about, we're heading for a peace rally in Kingston, New York on May 27th at the Four Corners of Freedom here in Kingston, New York, Crown and John Street. We're sending you more information about it. You can see they're ramping us up toward war. And as I said, when all else fails, they take you to war. The economy's failing big time. It's going to fail in Europe. It's going to fail in most of the world. I'm giving you the data. I report the data coming out. We're not making it up. That's why I read to you what they're reporting. And then we give you our trends analysis and trend forecasts of the facts. You see where the shipping is going. Yeah. You see where the firings, layoffs are ballooning. Interest rates going up. If we don't have peace, again, nuclear Armageddon is in the near destiny. So do what you can to support Occupy Peace. OccupyPeace.com, OccupyPeace.com. Judge Napolitano has already agreed to be one of the speakers, and we're reaching out to others. And we can't do this without you. Imagine if the billionaires gave us $100 million like they gave the little clowns like that Bezos jerk over there in Texas, or Texas, or the one in Georgia, Adams, whatever her name was. $100 million to run a losing race for governor. Can you imagine if they donated $100 million for peace? So, all of you that are listening, please send something, anything you can, or do nothing. The future's in your hands. Don't drop it. Thanks for tuning in, and check out the great video we did yesterday with Judge Napolitano. There's no man that knows the Constitution of the Bill of Rights better than he does. Thanks for tuning in.
At the Trends Journal, the best investment you could make, because it's the best investment into your mind, and it can change how you look at the world.
Over the last 30 years, Joe Salante has been more accurate about predicting what would be happening than anyone else I'm aware of.
The Trends Journal is one of the greatest sources of information, and and it really is. You're predicting these things well ahead of time. I would encourage everyone to go grab the latest copy.
Been a Trends Journal subscriber for 20 years. I just have to commend you. What you guys have put together in your latest Trends Journal, there's nothing like this out there.
Sir, everything that you predicted about the economy, you were absolutely right. So I have followed you all this time. So please take a look at the Trends Journal.
You correctly forecast that the Fed would hike rates quite aggressively, correctly said that initially gold and silver would drop as the Fed starts to raise rate to 1.5% and above. When we spoke last, Bitcoin was around 49,000. You said you expect to drop, and if it drops below 30, 35, then it could really drop.
Trends Journal, which I would encourage people to go and check out. It's actually a 200-page document, pure data-driven analysis.
Gerald Salenti, the top trends forecaster in the world. Gerald, you had an interesting call back in September of last year. You said gold had bottomed, which is exactly what happened. And here we are, and we're above $1,900.
Subscribe to the Trends Journal. Read history before it happened at trendsjournal.com.